while it makes sense to me that we connect together all of these separate conflicts, but does that mean that the whole question over was President Bush in error to have launched the invasion of Iraq, does this absolve him to some degree of the gravity of that decision, since as you're positing, this was a continuation of a much longer war? Or is it essentially that each of these presidents bears a similar sort of weight of having restarted or extended the conflict?
Well, I mean, George W. Bush's decision to invade Iraq in 2003 was, in a sense, uniquely reckless. And he deserves to be indicted by history for that decision. But that said, I believe that the continuities between one administration to the next with regard to the prosecution of this war are actually more important than the discontinuities. It is absolutely true that from one administration to the next, priorities shift, the techniques change. George W. Bush believed invade, occupy, transform. That's what he attempted to do, particularly in Iraq. Barack Obama doesn't believe in invading and occupying countries. He's learned from Bush's failures that that's a lousy approach, but Barack Obama has now placed greater emphasis on the use of drones as instruments of assassination, a greater emphasis on using special operations forces, once again waging war through proxies by using U.S. forces as trainers and advisors. So it's important, it's interesting to acknowledge that the Obama approach differs from the George W. Bush approach, but I think it's more important and indeed more interesting to note that Barack Obama has continued the war for the greater Middle East that he inherited from George W. Bush and that George W. Bush had inherited from Bill Clinton and so on.
How then does a president escape the trap that has been put in place by this long sequence of prior presidents?
Well, I mean, the fact that the war drags on despite the absence of success, I think, is one indication of the fact that presidents, this person that we refer to as the most powerful man in the world, may well be most powerful woman, the continuities suggest that power is actually quite limited. The presidents are a prisoner of circumstance. Some of the circumstances relate to domestic politics. Other circumstances relate to the world beyond America's borders, which is not nearly as plastic as some presidents and many commentators seem to assume. Think about the range of methods that we have employed, relying on shock and awe, invade and occupy, counterinsurgency, counterterrorism, humanitarian intervention, peacekeeping, on and on. An enormous range of experimentation, all driven by the expectation that somehow or other the adroit use of American military power is going to fix things. And to take on board the range of efforts over this long period of time seems to me necessarily leads you to the conclusion that American military power will not correct the dysfunction that is prevalent in the Islamic world, in many parts of the Islamic world. I need to be careful of my phrasing there. And that therefore the war for the greater Middle East is an act of folly.